money has never really been important for me. Money doesn't drive me. And that goes back to me helping, right? If I'm helping others and I'm serving and I'm doing those kinds of things, then that's been always my heart's desire, right? So having money and making money has never been that important, which is true until you don't have any. and then it's kind of important that we go back and learn the lessons of how do we still serve others and do the right thing and still be okay with being able to make money and not take advantage of people, right?
Welcome to the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast, and I'm your host, Dwayne Kerrigan. With 35 years in business and close to 30 ventures across 12 industries, I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Two bald-headed boys here. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a really dear friend of mine who has been in my mastermind group for coming up probably 15, 16 years. His name is Mike Grandjean. You talk about a guy that has just grinded it out over the years. Mike, you started on a volunteer fire department. This actually blew me away, which I didn't even know this.
Yeah.
But you started a volunteer fire department at age 14. You joined the Navy at 16. Served 7 years.
7 years total, yeah.
7 years total. Last 5 of those was with a Marine Recon battalion, which for those of you who don't know what that is that's like a forward-moving battalion that does reconnaissance and so they're like front of the line stuff.
Yeah, so when I started out, I was on the blue side of the Navy as a corpsman. And then I had to switch over to what we call the green side, which is to go with the Marines.
Yeah. And you were a medic, right?
And I was a medic. So I ended up being a medic with the Marines. And my first unit was artillery, and my second unit was a support battalion. And then my third unit was a recon battalion. Yeah. So
right. Nice.
That's where I finished.
So at 25, you borrowed $10,000, from your dad. You grow a business up to about $1.5 million. I'm just going to give a high level view here of what I know. You can kind of fill in the gaps and we'll chat about it. But then bad partnership, get bought out for $100K, much less than the value of the business. You were doing $1.5 million, I think, in revenue. Then you open up your own remediation business, put your partner out of business in like 72 days, I think. And then you grow that from basically 0 to 25 million in revenue in 5 years. You've done over like $500 million in project value. And then 2015 to 21, you lose a bunch of dough, somewhere between 7 and 10 million. Get pushed into bankruptcy, $600,000 in personal debt. And then that's like act 1's the military, the 2's the businesses, and then act 3, you start up a consulting business and in 14 months pay back all your debt, clean everything up. And to me, the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, and just for the listeners out there, so I can frame this effectively, is like, I have witnessed Mike because I'm in his mastermind group. When we were looking at programming for the new year in 2026, I was blown away at what Mike accomplished in the last year. And it's not really the last year, it just all kind of happened in the last year. But the transition that he's had over time, I refer to him as the comeback king. And so I really wanted to get you on the show to just share the story, just talk about what happened, maybe the mindset, like whatever we're going to get into. And I know it'll be great because I know you lead from the heart more than anybody I've ever really met. And so that was kind of the piece that I wanted to explore, was just for those of you who have, maybe you feel like you're at the bottom, maybe you're en route to the bottom, maybe you've been at the bottom and are on the way back up, or maybe just things aren't going as well as you had hoped, like in 2025. And I just really, really wanted to fire off this year with this conversation at this time because I believe that it's going to go somewhere. I have no idea where this conversation is going to go. We haven't talked about it. We had dinner last night, didn't talk about the podcast, didn't talk about what we're going to talk about because I hate rolling like that. So, guys, ladies and gentlemen, very dear friend of mine, Mike Grandjean. Dude, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
yeah. Well, dude, you should be. You've created an extremely awesome role, and so I don't know where you were. I think I'd love to kind of start just so the audience has a little bit of framing of like, who is Mike Grandjean at 14, 16? Like I would, as I was like doing your research, I didn't realize you went into the military at 16. I was
Well,
like,
so at 14, I joined
the fire
the
department.
fire department. And that was, we lived out in the sticks, just east of Albuquerque. And there was a bad accident. And my parents and I went down to the accident. My mom was a nurse. And we went down to the accident, and it was the volunteer fire department that showed up, and they were just like, hey, we need people. And so my mom and dad volunteered. Well, I became a part of that. And so from that day forward, I started going to fires. I started going to car accidents. I started doing just everything in the volunteer fire department, and they trained me and they did that kind of stuff. And I was atrocious in school. My last year as a senior, they gave me a D- and said, "Could you please leave us? Here's a gift, a parting gift. Please do not come back again."
Right.
Yeah, so I knew that the college was not for me, was not going to be for me. I had an uncle and a cousin that were in the military, and so I decided to join. And I just happened to show up at a Navy recruiter's office one day and told them what I did. And they said, "Well, you can be a Navy corpsman." And I was like, okay. And so it started, and that's how I started. And I went to boot camp and graduated and went to my first A school. And then from there, it was funny because while I was still in my schooling, I would go every night to the emergency room after school. And I would start working at about 5 o'clock at night. And then I'd work till about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I'd go back and go to bed. And then I'd sleep a few hours and I'd get back up and I'd go to school. And then every afternoon I would go back and I'd work all the way through. And so
So was that in high school, you mean? Or
no, that was when I
you
was
were
in the
Navy?
military. Yeah. I just, loved being in the emergency room, and I learned everything about it. And so then when they sent me to my first duty station, I worked in the emergency room there, and I was in charge of my ambulances, and I did all that. And then they gave me a choice, and they said, well, you can go with the Marines in Okinawa. You can go with the Marines in Okinawa, or you can go to the Marines in Okinawa. Where would you like to go? I was like,
how's Okinawa
cool.
sound?
Okinawa's good. Let's go, Okinawa. So then I went to a special school to learn how to be a Marine, basically. And I went from wearing a regular blue uniform to wearing a Marine Corps green uniform. Then I spent the next 5 years with the Marines, and that's all I did was be with them and do all the training and jump out of helicopters and shoot guns
Yeah.
and then just fix people and just that was the job as a corpsman, right? I was just always the guy that turned around and took care of the people and took care of the guys and made sure they were healthy.
So I'm curious, if we go back just to the 16-year-old boy, what was the drive, or what was the push to get you into the military? Like, was it because you felt you didn't have anything else to do, or what was the thinking? Like nowadays, like some parents don't want their kids driving at 16 because they don't think they're responsible enough. Some kids don't even want to get their driver's license because they don't either want that responsibility, or they don't, it's too much or whatever. It's like, or kids don't go and get a job at McDonald's or whatever. But at 16, you join the freaking military. And
Yeah, well, I joined when I was 16 in the delayed enlistment program, but I couldn't go to the military till I was 18. So I had to graduate high school. But I knew when I was 16, because you could join when you were 16. I knew when I was 16 that there was no way we were going to college. Like college was absolutely not my future. And what I didn't know then, and I know now that I've learned a few years ago was, of course, I have, ADD, ADHD, ABCD, DEFG, like I have every one of them, you know, and I was dyslexic. I didn't know that. I just knew me and school didn't get along at all. And doing the homework and that kind of stuff just wasn't going to happen. So doing the hands-on stuff was good for me. So I could do the hands-on stuff. So being in the fire department, it was all hands-on training, right? So by the time I was 16 or 17, I was fighting fires and standing with a hose and, you know, putting out house fires and going to accidents and doing all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, that was, you know, what I knew at the time. And my mom was a nurse. And so I was like, okay, I could be a corpsman and I could go to the military. And then I didn't have to go to school. Well, it turned out in the military, the way you learn is you learn by doing. They send you to school and they give you some books, but really what you do is they, you know, you watch one, you do one, and you teach one. That's it. So you learn really fast. And that's what the military trains you to do. You watch one, you do one, and then you teach one. So at that point, that kind of learning for me went really quick. And I was in the emergency room and I got to learn everything. And by the time I got out, I mean, literally, I was almost like a physician's assistant. I could do everything and write every script and everything except class 1 narcotics. And all was like a doctor. All I did was treat guys every day for all their aches and pains. And, you know, if they were, you know, and when things really got bad, you know, I mean, you did all the stuff, you know, like I had a guy one time fall and have a compound fracture of his femur. So we had to back him out in a helicopter and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And then all the bad stuff that happens that you do your best to try to forget, that you don't really want anybody to know. Right.
So I'm curious, did you ever like think about becoming a doctor? Like once you got out of the military going, hey, maybe I could, because I've got such a depth of practical experience.
Yeah. So it's really funny. While I was in my first mentor, right, lady that I had, when I was in Corpus Christi and I was in the ER, she told me, you need to be a doctor. You need to be a doctor. When I was in high school, I took my ACT test and I got a 13, right? So like completely bombed it. And she made me go back and I had to study and she made me study and she made me do it. And I went and took it and I got a 25, right? So it was a good, reasonable score.
What's it out of 100 or?
It's at a 32. Oh, that's the aptitude test that we use in, you know, the States to kind of see where you're at. And I got a 25. And she did everything, man. She turned around and she helped me. And I won what was called the Golden Rule Award for J.C. Penney back then. And I was one of the leaders in the community that did volunteer work. She got the admiral to write me a letter. Like she put my application together for the Naval Academy and they sent me to the Naval Academy and they sent all my paperwork to the Naval Academy. And I didn't get in because I needed a 26 and I got a 25. And so that was one of the deciding paths in my life where it was like, okay, here's the split. Like you're not going to go be a doctor. You're going to go be a corpsman for now. And it's those things that, you know, my life would not be where I am today if I got a 26. You and I would not be sitting here if I got a 26 and I got a 25.
Could you not have rewritten it again to try to get a 26 or a 27? But you chose.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, what was the meaning? Was it an empowering meaning that you attached to it or a disempowering meaning? What was the?
You know, at the time, I'm not sure that I really knew much about empowering meetings or disempowering meetings, you know, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I just kind of at the time was like, this is not for me. I won't be able to do that. And then at that point came back, hey, here's the Marine stuff, go do Marine stuff. And so they sent me to be the Marine stuff, which I truly loved. Like being with the Marines and doing the stuff that I did for those guys and taking care of them and helping them was, you know, that was everything about me. You know, one of the things that you hear, right? You hear in the movies, all that kind of stuff, and you see the gunfight and all the stuff, right? And then all of a sudden they yell corpsman up. Well, that was us. When the bullets were flying and everybody was running backwards, we were running forwards to go save whoever that was. And it was just that ingrained in you. That fear was no fear. It was, that guy needs help and you will do everything to save him, including your life. And that was me. That was who I was.
It's not who you were,
Yeah.
it's who you are.
And it's who
Like
I am.
even today,
Yeah.
like you are the guy that looks to help save. Like if somebody needed a shirt, you'd give it you give them your shirt, your pants, and your underwear and socks. Like it would just be, I know you as a
And that it is, and it's an amazing trait that I have, but it's also one of my detriments as well too, because I've made some bad business decisions along the way because I led with my heart and not with my business brain and what I needed to do.
Where did that form? Like, do you think it came before the military? Did you like, was it early, like foundational? I just out of curiosity.
It's funny because I didn't realize what it was until I did Date with Destiny.
Yeah, like they talk about, Tony. If for those of you guys who don't know what Date with Destiny is, it's the premier program that Tony Robbins runs. That's actually where Mike and I met back in 2008 ish. Actually, just Tennille and my wife, as you all know, Tennille and I just finished a Date with Destiny just 3 days ago, actually, and it was phenomenal. And it's a great reset for any of you guys who are looking for a real reset to drive you in your life. This is not a sponsorship or a commercial for Tony Robbins, but I mean, it was his 90th Date with Destiny. He's been doing it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the program, it's like better than it ever has been, in my opinion. And it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just gives you a different perspective. So anyways, I don't want to make this about Tony Robbins.
Tony changed my life. I mean, he was one of the people in my life that changed my life.
Yeah.
Right.
But he asked this question.
And he asked the question. And so one of the questions is,
who was you, right? Is that
it was go back and to your earliest memory. So I have a gift and a curse. My gift is I can't remember things from the past. My curse is I can't remember things from the past.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that has happened to me is because of all the things that happened. And I, just recently did a whole bunch of stuff and with the VA, and apparently I also have PTSD now, whatever. So, but it's one of the things because of that I don't remember. And he makes you go through that exercise. And when you go through that exercise, you have to remember one of the earliest things in your childhood. And I tried and I tried and I couldn't remember, and I kept trying. I couldn't remember. And then I finally remembered where it was. And the trauma came for me. And my dad was mad at my mom and they were having a fight. And I was standing on my mom's right leg. I think I was 4. And my sister was standing on her left leg and we were clinging onto her leg. And my mom and dad were fighting, and my dad took his fist and he put it right through the wall. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what I remembered, that my dad was mad. Now, all things to be fair, my dad was the most amazing man, kind-hearted man on the planet. Right. And I think they were fighting about my mom wanting to go back to work or something. I don't know. But that memory was the first one. And that's when I realized that I had this uncanny desire that I needed to help and I needed to fix. And I could get through any situation and I could fix it. Like I could talk my way through it. I could communicate my way through it. I could do anything that I needed to do and I could fix it because I didn't want the confrontation. Like I was adverse to any confrontation. And I turned that into helping. And how do I help? And how do I help others? And then,
is that because you felt at that age you couldn't help your mom at the time? So
I don't have any idea, but it was that thing that came to me that just, hey, I want to be able to help, and I want to be able to help others, and whatever that takes, and it was whatever it took, which was part of the whole corpsman thing. I mean, it was the stuff that we did to make sure our Marines were taken care of. It didn't matter. You just did it.
So while we're on the topic, this one of the things that's rolling in my brain right now is like one of the other questions that Tony asked in the program is whose love, which of your two parents, and to preframe this, we all love both our
Yeah.
parents. Sometimes we hate them as kids, but
Yeah.
we love our parents. But there's one parent whose love you crave the most, and I'm curious, which one was it for you?
It was
And
my dad.
it was your dad.
Yeah, it's my dad.
And what did you have to do to get that love?
Yeah, it was whatever.
Help,
You know what I mean?
fix.
Yeah, help, fix, take care of. Again, I grew up Gen X, so like we lived out on a 5-acre ranch. My parents left in the morning. They didn't come home till 5 or 6 o'clock at night. We got up at 6:30 in the morning to catch a bus. We rode a school bus an hour every day to school. We got home and then we had 3 or 4 hours on the ranch by ourselves. There was no TVs, no cell phones, no games, no nothing. And, we just did whatever it took. And, we had all the chores. We had to clean the house and we had to do all the laundry and we had to cook the food. And, I took care of everything for everybody always, which has been as we go back to Tony's world, primary question. And my primary question was, how do I take care of everybody always? And it's an unfulfilling question. You, you can't ever.
Yeah.
It's one of those that you can never fill.
Right.
So, and it's been one of those things that I've had to be able to struggle with is, how do I then take that and not make the mistakes that I've made in business? Because almost every mistake I've made is because I tried to take care of somebody else and not do the right business thing. I did it from an emotional place instead of doing it from, okay, what's the best business outcome? And that's one of the things I've learned in the last 30 plus years of being in business and it's been a very expensive, it's been a very expensive outcome. I've lost millions and millions of dollars. But
yeah, you've lost a lot of money over the years.
Yeah, I think,
and I don't laugh at it. I laugh with you at it because
100%.
We've been on the journey together.
Yeah, we've been on it together.
I just don't want the listeners to think I'm an asshole and laughing at you.
No. We've been on, and you've seen this, and you've seen me through these years, and to my detriment, not go to my brothers and ask them advice and make a bad decision, and then turn around and go in and because I made it on an emotional a response instead of having a strategic plan and coming up with a real plan and figuring out what the outcome needs to be to go in and actually do what that needs to be.
Well, but also like when you said that question, the presupposition of the question is that you have to fix. So it's like, for those of you who are interested in digging into primary question, because it is the one thing that drives us most in our subconscious, because we create the question at a very young age. Tony's book, Awaken the Giant Within, you don't have to go to Date with Destiny to do this. I mean, you can, ChatGPT it, primary question, Tony Robbins. You could even go old school and Google it. Or you could buy a book, Awaken the Giant Within. But there's a lot of resources to find and source out what your primary question is. But there's a presupposition to a question. The presupposition, that Mike would, in that question, would be that you have to do it, which then inhibits you from asking for help. But like when you go back and look at your history in, success in the Marine Corps, success in building your first business at, 25, growing it to $1.5 million. There's a lot of people that like 90+% of the businesses out there are less than $1 million. And there's, you don't have to be successful to you don't have to be $20 million business or a $50 or $100 million business to be successful. That's not the definition of success. Having a business that was doing $1.5 million, that's a good business.
It was a good business, and it allowed my wife to be able to stay home with our kids, and we had a good life. And when we started, like everybody else, we had nothing. We were barely making ends meet, and we built a great little business. And then that one went sideways because I didn't know any better at the time. Because when I started with business, I knew nothing about business.
Yeah.
I knew medical. I didn't know anything about business at the time.
Well, I think the year after you got out of the military, you made like $9,200 that year or something like that.
Yeah, I
I
made
read.
less than 10,000, so I didn't have to owe any tax to the government.
Yeah.
I didn't even make enough to pay tax.
Wow.
I slept on a guy's couch for a year, a friend of mine, and I slept on his couch for a year and waited on tables and sold cars and insurance and anything and everything that I could try to do to make a buck. And
And then what was it that, while we're here, like, because there's a lot of people have kids, or there's people listening to this podcast that are in that situation.
yeah,
Whether they're waiting tables or whatever, they're in a place that they don't want to be, and they want to move towards a better place, um, or perceived better place.
right.
But what was the thing that flipped you into business? Because you don't have a business background. That's your parents didn't own businesses.
No.
So what was it that kind of triggered for you?
So I happened to meet a guy who was my neighbor, and he said, I'll send you. I was going to become an industrial hygienist. So that basically an industrial hygienist works for different businesses and companies and things like that to determine environmental outcomes. So asbestos testing, lead testing, mold testing, environmental testing, phase 1 testing, anything that has to do with kind of environmental testing and that kind of stuff. And he said, I'll send you to school and I'll teach you how to do it, and you can come work for me. And it was $8.25 an hour. And I said, okay, I'd do it. And that just got me out of the restaurant industry, because at that point I was in the restaurant industry. And so I just started working for him. And that's when computers came out, and I was lucky enough to know how to type. And one of the things my dad made me do in high school, which was the most incredible thing I can say today that had ever happened to me back then, was he made me take a typing lesson when I was a freshman in high school. I was supposed to take plastics or something. It was full, and the lady sitting across the table was like, "Oh, he can take typing." And I was like, I was in 9th grade. I'm like, "You want me to do what?"
Dude, you're so aging us right now,
Oh my
man.
God.
Like
Oh yeah.
typing,
This is
people are like, "What the hell is a typewriter?"
What's a typewriter? So yeah, he made me take typing, and I actually got to learn to be pretty good. I could type about 50 or 60 words a minute. And anyways, so then what happened was we started this other job. And when I started this job, we had to write environmental reports. And so I learned how to use the computer, and I learned how to write the environmental reports, and I learned how to do that. And one of the companies that we work for, they came to me and they said, "Hey, we want you to be an estimator and a project manager." I said, "Okay." So I made a lot of money. So I went from $8.25 an hour to $40 an hour.
Oh, wow.
Because I was working on a federal contract, right? And it had a specific wage. And that lasted about 90 days, and the business was an atrocious business. It had poor culture, and I mean, it was bad. And I was like, "Man, you guys can't pay me enough money to stay here." And I left, went to work for another company for a year and a half. In the last 6 months, my boss left, and I ran the whole company. I did everything, right? The only thing I didn't do was pay the bills. But I got every job. I did every job. I finished every job. I estimated. I hired every employee. I fired every employee. I just ran the company. And he went off to Houston, and he'd call me once a week for 5 minutes and check in. And he got back after 6 months, and then he said he was going to fire everybody and do the thing. And he was going to keep me and the partner I had at the time. And we were like, "Hey, we're leaving. We're going to start our own company." And in the middle of all that, I had one of my very good friend's father, who was in business, come to me, and he says, "Well, you should start your own company." And I was like, "I don't know how to start a company. I have no idea what to do." Right. And I had no idea. I mean, I didn't even know where to start at all. And he said, "You need to call a lawyer, and here's my lawyer." And I called the lawyer and started the thing and figured it out and researched. And when my old boss came back, I told him that I would stay until we kind of got things up and running. And he said, "No, you won't." He said, "You won't be able to." And I lasted 2 days, and then I realized that I couldn't, because I was in charge of every single thing in that company, everything. And the second I left, anything that went wrong was now my fault, whether it was right or wrong. And I left. And I came home one day, and Maria was 6 months pregnant when I quit with our first baby.
Oh, wow.
She was 6 months pregnant. And I walked in. I said,
You quit and had to go tell her that?
I quit.
Oh,
And I walked in the door and I was like, babe, I just quit my job. And I said, we're starting the new company. She's like, what the are you? I'm 6 months pregnant. She was 6 months pregnant. So 90 days later, my partner stayed at the old company. And 90 days later, I got it all put together and all the licenses and all the insurance and all the everything. And we started our first job. And 30 days later, I paid my dad back his $10,000. And we had the first company. That's where I learned and, learned from CPAs and learned from mistakes and learned from people and everything and bonding companies, and started off small and got to, be a really good sized company doing work and doing a lot of work for the government. And that lasted for 10 years. Then, of course, I was doing a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff in the middle of all that too. And then we got towards the end, and my partner wasn't showing up to work anymore, and he wasn't doing anything. And I was like, can't do this. And so I tried to buy him out. Like, I did everything I can. I made the most stupid decisions on the planet, like trying to buy him out. The value of the company at that time was worth about $350,000. And I had done a deal with him that I would have paid him $650,000 for it. And which would have just been the most atrocious thing ever. And he walked in and sat down one day and he said, unless you give me 650 in cash, I can't go. I was like, man, this guy's never come up with a dollar. That we've been in business for 10 years. I came up with every dollar to do it every time. There's no way he can come up with the money to buy me out. And he said, I want 650 in cash. I said, can't do it. And the most amazing thing was at that exact second in time, I felt like this weight lift off my shoulders. Like everything was gone. And I was like, oh man, I can't do that. There's no way I can do that. 2 days later, I turned around and we took our cars, and I was driving a brand new Ford truck, and Maria was driving a brand new Escalade, and we were living high. And
How old are you at this time?
that would have been 10 years. I started when I was 25, so I'd have been 35. And so I turned around and took our trucks back in, and that's when I had to rebuild. And that was that would have been the second time I had to rebuild. And I walked 2 miles that next morning, and I went and bought her an old used Honda for $10,000. I said, babe, here's your car. And we started over from scratch. And it was all by myself again. And I had to start over all by myself.
So this is the first remediation company that you guys built.
Yeah, that was the first one. That was the first one that we
partner.
built. Yeah,
Right.
me and my partner.
Right.
And this time I had 100 in cash. And I bought my wife a new car. I borrowed a truck and a trailer from my father-in-law, an old Ford pickup truck and a flatbed trailer. And all day I just went out to my old clients, and just told them that I was starting a new company. And they were like, why? And I said, well, I have a partner, and we had a falling out. They didn't know I had a partner. Like, nobody knew that I even had a partner in the company. They all thought it was me. And I thought if I could do $500,000 in that first year in revenue, then we would be okay. Then we'd end up being okay. And the first year I did 3.5 million. And the second year I did 7. The third year I did 14. And the fourth year I did 25. We had 150 employees, and I bought another company, and we had an electrical division, mechanical division, general contracting, demolition, environmental. Like we were killing it.
Dude, I mean, that is awesome growth, right?
Yeah.
So
it was crazy.
Well, so while we're on the topic, I'd love to chat about the learning lessons along the way for scaling.
Yeah.
And maybe if there's, some pre-frame to did what you do during that rapid growth contribute to the decline?
Yeah.
And so tell me, I'm just curious, the first year you do 3.5 million, that's double what you did with your partner. So how you manage that, and what did, what was the strategy? How'd you scale it?
Well, and that's part of what his demise was, is that he thought that the company that we had such a strong brand that it would continue to go. What he didn't realize is that I had 100% of all the relationships with our customers. So when I left, they wanted to do business with me. They didn't want to do business with the company. So that's the reason why he ended up going under in 72 days, right? Was because it's all relationship built.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all the relationships that I had built. So when we started, after, a month or whatever it was, I needed a crew. And there was one of the old guys that from the old company, and he was a Hispanic guy. And I asked him if he would come over and run the crew. And he's like, well, I don't know how to run a crew and I don't know how to do it. And I said, I'll teach you. Like, I'll teach you, I'll mentor you, I'll help you. And I said, I said, and I said, in one day, I said, you'll buy this company. And one day you will buy this company. And so we started, and he came over and I taught him how to, manage and lead and all the things that it needed to do and to take care of that. And then one of the estimators was, things were falling apart. And he was like, dude, things are just falling apart over here. Can I come work for you? And I was like, yeah, come work for me. And so he came over. And so we kind of got to kickstart it, relatively easier. All day I would go out and sell. And then all night I would just go back and write SOPs and training manuals and, everything we had to do. We didn't have ChatGPT back then, right?
Right.
So we'd sit hours and
There's a lot
hours
of work back
and
then.
typing and
Yeah.
typing and creating and doing all these documents and stuff. And that we would do that. And then we got lucky. And there was a couple of contracts that he was supposed to sign, and he ended up not signing them. And the clients came to me and said, well, we want you to do this work. And so I got to sign them. It was a couple big jobs, $200,000 or $300,000 projects. And then we got another blessing. Another job came in, and somebody said, hey, I can't finish my building. Will you finish it for me? And we want to pay you cost plus. I was like, sure. So between those jobs and a couple of those big jobs, man, everything just kind of fell into place, and they all fell in my lap. No, we had to run them and manage them and do them and get them done. But that's what got us, to that $3.5 million worth of revenue in that first year, because we had a couple of really good big jobs come in, and a lot of really good clients. And I was able to pick up the pieces and get, some of my old workers and stuff like that. And we could start all over. So it just, it was a big blessing, and everything worked out from that perspective because we got the opportunity.
Yeah. There's two things there that you really like. I just want to recap for the listener, because I thought they were really, really great pieces of advice in the thread of what you're talking about. So one is, first and foremost, is, especially at the size of the business you originally had, around the $1 to $2 million in revenue, is like, who holds, if you're a business owner right now, who holds the relationships inside your business, versus, thinking that your brand is bigger than or more valuable than what it potentially might be in the community. I think I draw to this for two reasons. One, just the obvious, which is who holds the relationships.
Right.
If you have a sales guy or girl that's out on the road, and they are the face of the company, you need to have some type of process in place to ensure that you have connectivity and to the client, and protecting those relationships. As your business scales and gets bigger,
Right.
that becomes less and less important, because there's not one person that holds the relationships.
Correct.
But the other piece to that is, we're entering this new age of, agentic AI, and, having deep relationships with your clients. This is an area of focus that I think could be potentially underscored or missed, depending on the business or the person, in that, relationships are going to be everything when it comes to AI and AI implementation. And that is something that AI will never be able to replicate,
Right.
or not for a very long time. Shouldn't say never. But that is critical, to make sure that you, endure and facilitate or cultivate those relationships. The second thing you said is, going back when it comes to scaling, is having the SOPs in place so that you have something to train on. And, from an operational perspective, that's critical. Number one. Number two, uh, again, I'm going to refer back to AI, because that's, having SOPs is how you train an AI. It's going to be critical when you start to, if you haven't already realized that, uh, artificial intelligence is going to have to become a very big piece of your business. Having those SOPs in place, today is going to make tomorrow a lot easier when you go to do training. So I just
Yeah,
want to
no,
draw on
no,
those
yeah,
because I
for
thought they
sure.
were
You know,
unbelievable,
and
great.
just a big part of that one, how important those relationships are, especially when you're a smaller company. I'm working with a client now, and that was one of the issues that came up even last week, because I was doing a bunch of the work for the client, and then they found out that I wasn't an employee of the company, and then they were like, "Oh, well, we want to work with you." And I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute, hold on. You, the relationship is what you have is with this customer, not with me, right?" But I had built that relationship with them for the last year, and I was the face, and they thought I was the face.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not the face. Like, this is the company. And of course, I would never take their client, steal their client, do anything like that. But that was one of the problems that ended up coming up, because, having those relationships are key, especially for those smaller companies, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the SOP part, like I work with clients all the time and they have none, and they're just running down the road, and they can't figure out why things aren't working, and they can't figure out why they don't have culture, and they can't figure out why, you know, nothing is going right. And it's like, where's your SOPs?
Yeah. If you don't have
Where's your manuals?
if you don't have an SOP, what are you going to train
Yeah,
against? Like,
nothing.
there's nothing to train against. It's like, it becomes random.
And you can't build culture. People don't know where they're going. They don't know direction. They don't know where the company's supposed to be going. I mean, and it just becomes a disaster, right? So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So then that's to get you to 3.5. What are the key themes from 3.5 to 20 million or
Wow.
25 million?
So, and again, it's relationships, but it's your people. So we got to about, I think we were right about 10 or 12, and I was looking to hire an assistant or something. I can't remember. And I ended up having a conversation with this gal that came in, and she just blew me away. She was the director at one of the large universities for HR, and then she worked at one of the large construction companies, $150 million plus construction company. She was the head of their HR, and she was going to kind of semi-retire. And she came in, and she was like so overqualified for what I needed, that I was like, yeah, she's just way too overqualified for what I need. But what I did know is I needed her. And I was like, I need this lady. If I want to grow, and if I want to get to 25 million, I have to have this lady. And I called her, and she said, yeah, well, thank you very much. And, I'm not sure you can afford me. And, it's not really what I want to do. And I was like, okay, yeah, but the answer is no, you're going to come work for me. Well, thank you very much. No, like, I need you. And I persisted and persisted and persisted and persisted with her. And I finally got her to say yes. And the second I did that, my business flipped, because we went from this small Mike running the business into, let's build a business and now corporate culture, and let's have strategies, and let's have SOPs, and let's have all that kind of stuff. One day I was in my office, and I had this stack of resumes, and I'm going through these resumes looking at stuff, and she turns around, and she just walks in, and she grabs them out of my hand, and she just yanks them straight out of my hand. And I was like, what? She goes, you don't do that. That's not your job. And she turned around and she grabbed them and she went through them, trashed them all, came back with 3, did the interviews, did the stuff. She came back. She goes, here's the last 3 candidates. Now you can interview them. I was like, oh, I had no idea because I didn't know what I didn't know. Right? Yeah. I didn't know. And she came in and she wrote SOPs and she wrote HR manuals and she wrote training manuals and she raised the company's culture and she raised, she was kind of a bitch, right? She's a very nice lady, but she's very strict.
Hopefully she's not listening.
Yeah. No, she was amazing. She's still one of my best friends.
Yeah.
She was and is the most amazing woman.
But by bitch, you mean she had a high standard.
She had a high standard and she held people to the standard. Yeah. And people didn't like that.
Yeah. People do perceive that as being a bitch.
Correct.
And it's the biggest
just a
thing.
High standard.
People go, oh, it's, this person's not fun or they're not whatever story they make up about whether they're a bitch or they're not fun or they're strict or they're unfair or whatever that is. But that is part of.
She was all business. She was all business and she was going to raise that company to the next level, which is what I knew that I needed and why I needed to make sure that I got her. I just didn't know what I needed, right?
The bumper sticker for the listeners.
Yeah.
Like the bumper sticker on that for me, I don't know what it is for you, but for me, it's accountability.
Yeah.
It's someone that is going to hold, if you're the owner and you're not the type of person to hold accountability and with the primary question, I got to fix everything all the time for everyone. That probably is not going to lead to like high accountability. Not to say that you don't hold account, because I know you do, but it's like having somebody that is going to come in to the business and really add that structure, that accountability. The reality is A players want to be held accountable. B players kind of waffle a little bit. They can be in one area, they can be in another area. And C players are going to destroy and don't give a shit and
don't care at all.
And they don't care. And so like that, I think is a really great distinction about building A teams and moving B players, because not everybody's going to be an A player.
Right.
But your goal,
we know that now.
Your goal is to move people from Bs to As, identify Cs. And if like, what is the reason why they're a C? Is it just skill and they just need to be trained? And maybe they could be a B and an A, down the road, whatever. Or if they can't, eliminate the Cs, because sometimes it's not necessarily who you hire, it's who you don't fire.
Yeah. Well, and again, that goes back to the 3 T's, with Keith, you can teach, tolerate, or terminate. So, I mean, you're either going to teach them, you're going to tolerate bad behavior, you're going to terminate the employee. So, that's the one of the big things that came from Keith with being a mentor. But yeah, all of that was hiring the right people. And so before she even came along, I hired another guy and from another company that we had worked with, and that company was going out of business. And I got him to be able to come on, and I made him my operations manager, vice president of operations. And so he started running all the operations. And again, the other thing that I figured out and I learned, and because of, basically my primary question, is I was really not a very good estimator. Like when I really hired the right people and they came in and they estimated and they did the right stuff, they made way more money than I did.
You were giving deals?
I was getting shit away for free. All the time. It was like, oh, yeah, I'll help. Yeah, I'll do it for free, whatever. And they were like, no, we're in business. I'm like, really? But yeah, hiring the right guy. So I hired the vice president of operations first, and we really started to grow. We got to that point to where we were like, okay, great. Now's the shift. We really have to make this shift to get to be bigger. And we hired the administrative lady who came in and started running everything. And then, that's where we made the shift to be able to take it to that next level. But that was my forte, was finding quality people and putting teams together.
Okay. So I'm going to just press the pause here for a second, and the cameras may not have picked this up.
Yeah.
But you got emotional when you were talking about estimating and you not being a great estimator. And, what was that? What popped in? What was the thought that was popping in your mind?
It was just always part of me not being as successful in business that I probably could have been all of these years was because I just I didn't run everything as business then. So it was business and I made money and I was good at making money, but I wasn't good at, I could have made more money because I gave away a lot of shit for free. But then the other part of that was, and it still is today, really, money has never really been important for me. Money doesn't drive me. And that goes back to me helping, right? If I'm helping others and I'm serving and I'm doing those kinds of things, then that's been always my heart's desire, right? So having money and making money has never been that important, which is true until you don't have any. and, and then it's kind of important that we go back and learn the lessons of how do we still serve others and do the right thing and still be okay with being able to make money and not take advantage of people, right? Not take advantage of people.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Like you just said, like I think you used the words, I wasn't successful or I'm not successful. It's like,
Yeah.
I know, bro, you built a $25 million company. There's very few people who get the opportunity to build a $25 million company. And I'm actually interested in, like, it sounds like really to go from that 10, which, it's like 1 to 3 is a jump, 3 to 10 is a jump in mindset. I'm talking about 10 to 20 is another, like, is a jump, and then 20 to 40 is like, and that's when you really
100%.
But from a mindset perspective, it's like, when I think about, and I guess the question that was popping in my mind is, like, you built this great team that got you, I think you said 10 or 12 million you were at, that then popped you to 25 million.
Yeah.
And it really became the team that drove that. You had estimators in, you had this lady in that really provided structure and accountability and processes, and then a vice president of operations that could kind of manage things. And then the unwinding was, did that, like, the question, as you were saying about building the team, my hallucination was, or the question that I had in my mind was, did the unwinding start as the team started to disintegrate underneath you, or what was kind of the process there?
Of course, in whatever it was, 2009, 10, when all of that hit. And at that time I was doing boards with Keith. So I was on a board with Keith. And one of the guys on the board, which, again, one of the best reasons about being on the board is you get to see other people's businesses and hear their problems and help them with their solutions and stuff like that, which I think is paramount for every company. At some level, they need some kind of board or group to help them, make better decisions. We were able to get a piece of software that what helped us did some forecasting, and we didn't do forecasting very well at that time. And so we got some software in there. We did the forecasting, and we figured out that this was in January. We were doing budgets for the year. We figured out that by the June 1st that we would be broken out of business, and we would have burned through, I don't know, $2 million worth of cash, and we'd be gone.
That was what year?
2009 or 10, when the crash hit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of the hardest days of my life. I got up the next morning and I turned around and I had to lay off 100 people. I closed down 2 divisions, the electrical division, the mechanical division, got us down to around 50 some odd people in the company, built a strategic plan to figure out how to take care of our clients and close all the jobs down and do all the right things. We didn't leave anybody hanging, got all our contracts finished. And so we did all that, and we got it all done. And we had to get it down to back to 50 people. So that was the first kind of hit that started us kind of back down the slope a little bit. The real true reason why it ended up unfolding is, as we know, is if you're not growing, you're dying. And I just kind of got complacent with the company. every year I used to have these, bring everybody together, and we'd have these big meetings, my annual meeting, and we'd do culture, and we'd do all this special training that we had to do for construction and that kind of stuff. But it was all about, the employees and culture and branding, and, the employees and bringing them up, and what we could do and that kind of stuff. I know now that I didn't know then. I kind of got to the top, and then I got complacent because it wasn't growing anymore. I wasn't pushing anymore. I wasn't requiring deliverables and a standard for people to meet. And we were making money, and we were making a lot of money then.
Yeah, you were
We were,
balling.
man, we were,
Yeah, when I first met you, you were balling.
yeah. I mean, we were at that time, we were easily, putting in our pocket over $1 million a year.
Right.
And we were doing good.
Yeah,
And we were giving
wait a
away,
second.
and we were
You
giving
were-
away tons of money.
Yeah, that
Like charity.
I wanted to make that point because you were making way more than $1 million a year, but you were giving away another $1 million at least in charity and truthfully pimping your ride. Like
Yep.
So I want the listeners to understand that it wasn't really $1 million you were making, because you were probably making well over a couple.
Well, that was, below the line or above the line.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I bet you were traveling until you guys were traveling all the time.
Traveling
you
all
were
the time.
spending money like it was on fire.
We spent a lot of money. And for us, it wasn't material things. Well, we bought a nice big house. We had a nice big house that we bought. But for us, it wasn't cars, and it wasn't, stuff like that. But it was experience and traveling. Like, we were traveling all the time. And we were going all over.
You also had like 10 cars. You had all those Army vehicles.
Well, I had some Army vehicles. I had some military vehicles. Yeah. We had some stuff.
Some cool stuff.
We had some cool stuff, right? We did. We'd had some cool stuff. I've never really been a car guy, but
Yeah, no, you didn't have like Lambos or anything like that. No. But you had like really cool, I had some really cool fun stuff.
Had some fun stuff.
Yeah.
But then every year kind of after that, sales declined a little bit, and they kept going down. And then, we just had to keep redoing budgets and getting skinnier and skinnier. And we tried all kind of stuff to be able to try to get in more revenue, and we just couldn't find our place. Like, we couldn't find our niche in construction at that point. If you remember, at that time, we were in the 8A program, right? We were in the government program. So we were doing all government work at that point, and margins were really big. Yeah. So then we just tried to chase a few things and couldn't really get it. And I wasn't really holding my people accountable. And we weren't putting things to growth and to be growing and have a vision. And I just kind of let it slip. And when it starts slipping, it just starts falling, and it's hard to catch.
So I have a little bit of, I don't have a great deal of in-depth knowledge because, as you said, you didn't talk to the mastermind group as much as you probably should have. But I'm just trying to draw a couple of connections here in the conversation. And it's like, at first you said, well, kind of the environment changed, 08 happened and whatnot. But, oftentimes what happens in a recession is the government actually starts to prop up the economy, or attempts to prop up the economy through government incentive jobs and construction and infrastructure and all that kind of stuff, in order to kind of get the wheels back on the road. And then you then said, it was the environment, but I got complacent. And then you're like, I wasn't holding my people accountable. So I just want to kind of, if you don't mind sharing, deeply about, where, like, what created the complacency? Was it like, you often hear people say, hey, once you hit one goal, like before you achieve, goal A, just before you achieve it, you should have goal B in place so that you can continue to move forward. Like, was it that kind of stuff? Was it, was it the couple of things that popped in my head? Was that one? The other one that popped into my head was your relationship with money. The other thing that kind of popped into my head was just your spending. Like, you got to a certain point where you're like, holy smokes, this is it. This is the pinnacle, the top of the mountain. you're spending money more like you didn't do probably 5 years or even a couple of years earlier.
Sure.
So I'm just curious if you
Yeah,
could explore into that.
it is. It's a little bit of all those things. We got to the pinnacle, and I thought I made it. And I was like, "Oh man, I made it, man! I'm balling. I got money. We're traveling. We're good. We're
The
doing
ego, the
great.
chest gets a little
Yeah,
more
yeah."
puffy. Yeah.
And my relationship with money has never been great, only because, again, like I said before, money is not what drives me. Money's not my driver. That's not what brings me joy. But we were spending money and we were doing all that kind of stuff. And I just got to the point to where we weren't really, I wasn't focused on the business, and I wasn't focused on growing the business and finding the next thing. And we never found the next thing. And then at a part of that, right? So now we get through 2016 ish, we get two really, really good sized jobs.
Sorry, what size is your business in 2015 then?
15, we were probably close to, let's see, 15. Yeah, we're like close to 25 million.
Oh, you're still 25
yeah,
million
like,
at that stage.
25 million. Yeah.
Oh,
well, maybe not. Yeah, probably not. Probably 18, 19. We're probably down to 18, 19 million by then. But then we picked up these two big jobs. One of them, was a government project for Los Alamos National Laboratories. And we had like $2.5 million in the profit in this project, right? And it was going to take 10 months to finish. And then we had another job towards the middle of that one, 4 or 5 months later, that we picked up another project, and we were going to make $2.5 million on that project. And I was like, oh, this is it. Like, all I got to do is finish these two projects. I'll make $5 million in cash in the next 18 months and I'm done. I can be done. Now I can be done, right? Because I had these two big jobs.
Oh, be done as in retire?
Yeah, be done in, like, I can get enough money that I didn't, because, Grand Course sliding, I could get enough money at this point to put back into my pocket. Because my goal then, and kind of always had been, right, is if I could get to $10 million in net worth, then I could retire. So I kind of had that number always in my head. If I got to 10 million, I could retire. Didn't really know what that meant at the time, because is that net or gross or
right,
right, whatever.
You didn't have it.
Yeah,
full definition.
Wasn't clear.
Yeah,
but it's 10 million. The number was 10 million.
The note on that for the listeners is, if you have a goal, make sure you have clarity of the goal.
What exactly it means.
Right.
So I thought, man, we're going to do great, and we're going to get out of this. We're going to get out of this slide. We're going to get through these two projects. I'm going to make, $5 million, and I'll be able to retire and be done and do the next thing, whatever that's going to be. And the first project starts to go bad. We have one government employee that is just willfully, with intent and malice, trying to do everything they can to break us. And that job goes for almost 2 years, and I lose $2.5 million in cash. And then the other project that we were on, right, was the same thing. It was one government employee, and we were supposed to finish that job in 210 days. And it took me 1,067 days to finish that project. And I lost $2.5 million on that job.
Oh.
And then in between all that, we had some other stuff, and I lost another $1.5 million on that. So literally within that 5-year period, I lost like $7 million in cash. And that was everything that I had. It was all the extra, all the profit, all the savings. It was everything that I had. And we got down to the end of that, and I finally had to make the decision, which was, I have to close it down. I had to close it down, which was hard, right? Because this was my baby. I had to figure out how to do that. But I decided that I was no longer willing to let one person in the government control my life. And that's what it was. It was one person in the government that could control my life.
Well, on the one job.
On both. On the last two big jobs. Oh, yeah. No, 2 different jobs, 2 different people, but both in the government, right? And they were willfully and intentionally just trying to bury us. And I was just like, okay, I'm no longer willing to do this anymore. And so we started at that point having to roll things up and figure out how to close it up and sell stuff and sell assets and do whatever we could do. And try to avoid bankruptcy at that point.
Two things I'd love to just circle back on. So you've got several years of hindsight, being able to look in the rearview mirror,
Sure,
and kind of see what were the learning lessons, both business wise, what were the personal learning lessons. But then the other thing that I want to ask too about, this is not intended to be like, this question's not intended to be confrontational or anything,
Sure.
but it's like my hallucination is that looking at, two different people on two different jobs that work in the government, say, quote unquote, I'm out to get you type of thing.
Yeah.
But what else like might have been playing in the background in your emotions, your psychology as the owner? Like, if you really kind of flush that out,
Yeah.
did it end up being those two people, or were there some other things that, whether it's like as the owner, was there some key people you lost in the business when you had to fire or had to lay off a bunch of people? Was there other kinks in the armor that affected your operations or affected, your outlook on the business, or your like, my other hallucination is like, and I can only imagine that, like, you think you're at this level where you're about to get these two banger jobs, you're going to retire, you're going to go on to whatever's next, whatever that might look like. That'll be different for anybody else. And then all of a sudden you start losing money and it's like, fuck, I got to look for somebody to blame.
All of the responsibility falls on me. I made very, very critical, bad business decisions in not moving decisively and quickly when things started to go bad. So in both cases, well, in the first case, I wasn't really involved on that project as much. I still had my staff. My staff was still taking care of that stuff. And I let them take care of that stuff. And I didn't get as involved as I should have. And what I didn't do, and I should have done in hindsight now, is I should have legally at that point got involved legal counsel to stop the problems in the beginning. And we did. So, I didn't do that.
Yeah. So that was like the key that I just heard was I should have gotten involved.
I should have gotten involved.
Yeah.
And, right, because remember, I don't like confrontation. I should have gotten involved. I should have got confrontational. I should have got an attorney. I should have shut the project down. I should have made sure that we had clear expectations and got rid of the problem. I didn't do that. I put my head in the sand and I let it ride. And that is 100% my fault.
Hoping that the problem was going to self-correct.
It was going to self-correct. Now, the guy turns around and he finally leaves after, I don't know, a year and 10 months that we couldn't finish this job. They get him off the job. We finish the job in 60 days. Literally done in 60 days. As soon as he's gone. I should have gotten rid of him day one when we found out that there was a problem. Right? But I let my team fix it, one. But two, more importantly, is I should have gotten involved. Yeah. And I should have solved that immediately.
Yeah, and
I didn't.
But here's what I like. Here's my draw on this. Like, just pitching and catching on it.
Yep.
Is like your identification of, I don't like confrontation because your primary question is you got to fix everything for all people, which is interesting because, you think at that stage you'd want to fix it for your people. But on the other side, if your moving away value is confrontation, and that's your single largest moving away from value, then you're going to not want to engage. Right. And so I think that's like, I just want to kind of sit on this a little bit because oftentimes we don't want to recognize where we have weaknesses. And, it's like, one of the things like, which I think this is pretty much one of the dumbest things that you can do as a leader, but I've heard people promote, like, find out what your people's strengths are and just focus on their strengths. And it's like, yeah, that's awesome. And what about honing in? I'm not saying you should be negative and like focus on their weaknesses.
Right.
Of course you should focus on their strengths, but you still have to identify
And know what
and
they are.
address the weaknesses and at least know what they are. So whether it's in yourself or your people, know what your people's weaknesses are so that you can put people, systems, processes in place to protect them from themselves. Your whole story, like if you really kind of, and this is my hallucination,
Yeah.
but this is what I'm taking out. It's like, holy shit. And we've not talked about this.
Right.
Right. But it's like, that's the beauty of these conversations, is like, when you recognize that you don't like confrontation, it's like, okay, great. If you had conscious awareness of that at the time, you could put in place something or someone in your organization, or have a bat phone to a lawyer who's a pit bull, and they're going to step in and they're going to go take care of it. And you don't have to be the one that's confrontational. They say, hey, sorry, it's not me. The lawyers jumped in on this. Like, the investors are trying to protect us, or this, that, the other thing. You make up my board, we've both had boards. Like my board is kind of stepped in. They don't like the direction of where the project is going. And this is out of my control. Let's not get too tied into the story of, and I'm just generalizing, but let's not get, this is for the audience and for the listener, for myself as well. Let's not get too tied into our story of what the external factors are that we can blame, and start identifying, like, what is it in us that might be driving us to make, at some levels, destructive decisions for our lives, whether it's in your intimate relationships, whether it's in your business, whatever. But not getting involved was a destructive decision.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Like just letting that thing ride and putting my head in the sand and hoping that it was going to be okay cost me $2.5 million. And it wasn't, right? And we finally got through it. We finally got through the process, and we finally did all that.
Were you still on a board at that time?
No.
Do you think a board would have helped you, or an advisory board, or a mechanism where every quarter you meet with a couple people?
Here's the problem. I love boards, and I'll have boards and do boards and help people and stuff like that. The problem with boards is you have to be honest.
Yeah.
You have to be honest with your board. You have to be honest with your board members, and you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're not honest and you're not telling the full truth and all the detail, because the devil's in the detail, if you're not doing that, boards are great, but they're not really going to help you if you can't be honest.
So obviously,
yeah,
you're saying you weren't honest with yourself.
Well, I wasn't honest with myself. And part of the thing was, like in the second case, in the second case, when I was doing the second one that I lost money on, now everybody was gone, and I had to intimately be a part of that. And again, I did the same thing that I did before, which was, instead of taking care of the problem immediately when we knew there was a problem, I tried to come in and fix it. And I was like, oh, I can fix it. Oh, I can fix this person. Oh, I can change this person. Oh, this person is going to do the right thing. Oh, and I came in with that whole thing, like, I'll just fix it. And I tried 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 forever. And again, finally got to the point to where I was like, okay, look, I can't fix this person. I've tried everything. And I had to call a lawyer, and I paid him $10,000 to write me a one-page letter. And then 3 days later, the problem was gone.
Right.
And then 3 months later, we finished the job. Same thing. But I waited too long because I tried to fix it. The other thing I did bad on that job is, and again, instead of making the right legal decision effectively and immediately, I let it fester. And one of the subcontractors ended up suing me, and I lost $135,000 because I didn't do the right thing. I didn't make the right legal decision. I tried to do the right thing, but it was the right thing emotionally. It was the not right thing in business. So that cost me another $135,000, right? Because I didn't want to take action. I didn't want to be confrontational. I didn't want to say, look, this is the way it is. And sometimes in business, no matter what, the leaders have to make the hard choices. You have to make the hard decision. You've got to step up and do the right thing. And I didn't. And it cost me.
You know, it's one thing to say, and so I'd love for you to add so I'll go back to one of the original questions there of the two.
Yeah.
Which is like, what were the learning lessons? It's easy to say, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you got to have structure in place. But when you have, some programming going on inside your psychology that you're not even aware of, then it makes it hard to go, well, like, yeah, well, how do I do that? Like, yeah, that sounds easy. So what were the learning lessons, when you look back and you can glean a half a dozen pieces of advice or identification with potential solutions for the listener, for yourself? What does that look like? One of my first mentors, his name was Harold Cunningham, and he was like, man, he was so important to me in my life. Like, he taught me so many things, and he was so smart. And I think I've talked about him on the podcast before, but, I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without his mentorship and coaching. He taught me that the actions that we have to take, like, ignorance is not bliss. And you can't make the excuse that, well, I didn't know. You should have known. And it was one of those things where, having him as a mentor, being able to guide me through, those rough waters or those hard decisions or the things that I didn't see. Like, there's things in our businesses that you don't see. Not that they're not in front of you. They're in front of you in plain sight, but you choose or ignore, or you just don't see because you have a scotoma. Like, it's like, when your mom says to you, can you go grab the salt, go into the kitchen, grab the salt, or go downstairs and grab a loaf of bread. And you go down and you're like, can't find the salt. No, the salt's not here. It's there. It's on the second shelf. It'll be like right up there, and just, bring it here. And then it's like, no, Mom, the salt's not there. It's not there. And she's like, the salt is there. And she walks over and it's like, and right in front of you. And, that's what they call a scotoma. And, so it's a blind spot that you have programmed yourself to not be able to see because you didn't see it right away. You believe that I can't see it. I can't see it. I can't see it. It's not there. It's not there. It's not there. And so there are all kinds of those things happening in all of our lives and everywhere in our life. Right. How do people overcome that? And in this application, what happened with you? I mean, we've talked about a lot of shit here. Like, you start off like in the growth, the ego, the money's not your driver. So you don't have a great relationship with money anyways. And I'm repeating these not for Mike. Mike already knows. I'm repeating them because as you're driving or working out or doing whatever you do when you're listening to this podcast, the question is what are your scotomas? For Mike, there's money's not a driver. Okay. Then if you start losing money, you don't worry about it because it's not important to you. And I'm not saying this is about money, but the reality is companies need cash to continue. That's just a fact. 100%. Whether you like it or you don't like it, it's the reality of the world that we live in, and they require cash. And if you're the leader of the business, you got people working for you that have mortgages, who have car payments, who are putting their kids through school, and you have created the responsibility and to be able to ensure that the company moves forward. Those people live those lives. And at the end of the day, the word responsibility is the ability to respond. So money's not a driver. you're you're not involved in the business per se hands-on,
as
so
much.
there's a
Yeah.
distance.
Yep.
So that's something to think about if you're
Oh, yeah.
listening to this podcast or this conversation. You know, you don't like confrontation. So if you're listening, what is it you don't like that may cause you a problem in the future that you might want to look at, be aware of? Not that there's anything wrong with you, but what system process do you need to create in your business to protect the business from yourself? And then the other one was like, which is huge, is you weren't honest with yourself.
Right.
So I asked the audience, what are you not being honest about? What is it in your life? It doesn't have to be about business. And you know what? Truthfully, if you answer the question regarding your personal life, your intimate life, or your health, you'll be better off probably, because life is not about money. There's not a single rich dude I don't know that wouldn't give all his money for having health.
Yeah.
When they turn 80 years old. Like, they would be like, yep, at 80, I'll give it all away just to have health.
Yeah, that's a big one. But I mean, the thing that you said that probably is the most important is absolutely, positively being honest with yourself.
Yeah, I didn't say it. You said it, actually.
I think, as individuals, don't really take the time to think about that. Number one, we don't analyze it. And two, we don't want to tell ourselves those things, right? We want to tell ourselves the bad things, right? Like, hey, I'm not really good at this, or hey, I'm not really good at that, or, whatever. And having that self-awareness, I think, is the first step. Like, you've got to know and understand, these are the things that I am really, really good at. And these are the things that I really suck at. Like, I am not good at this. And this is one of my, my kryptonites, one of my downfalls. And it was, and in the end, that was the biggest thing that had that house of cards just come to an end, because I wasn't honest enough with myself to make those hard choices and those hard decisions, or get somebody to make those hard choices or the hard decisions and move them in the direction that they needed to, in a timely manner. Like, if we had done all of that, again, hindsight in the beginning, on the second project that went, haywire, we knew after the first 30 days on that project that it was going to be a problem. And when the new engineer came in and we started working with her, every one of us and every one of my team thought, okay, we can work with her. We'll fix it. We'll work with her. We'll fix it. And we tried and we tried and we tried. And on every single level, she was a problem. And we didn't say stop.
So when you say timely,
yeah,
I say, when would now be a good time?
Yeah, like, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, so this job was supposed to be, 210 days. We're 90 days, 120 days in, and it is a disaster. We are not getting anywhere on this project, and we're supposed to be done in another 5 months, and we are nowhere. One change order took 8 months to get completed, because she was so hard, and she wouldn't work with us. And we should have known then that we should have stopped this job and just said, nope, you guys take it back, figure it out, let us know when you're ready, and we'll come back and we'll help you fix it. And we didn't want to do that. And I didn't stop, and I didn't say, I don't care. This is what we're doing, and we're going to do this, and we're going to stop this right now. That would have saved me a lot. Well, potentially that would have saved me a lot of money. I'm sure there would have been lawsuits and everything else. But at the end of the day, I didn't make the hard choice. I didn't do the right thing. And I let it to continue. And we got 2.5 years down the road, and I finally had enough of her. 2.5 years later, I finally had enough of her. And then I got rid of her, and then we finished the job. But by then it was so bad, and it was so late. We had lost so much money that it was unrepairable at that time to keep the company.
Just go back to my original question. What were the lessons then, and what's the advice? What's the bumper sticker? What's the feedback that you give the listener on the key pieces for you? that are like at an emotional leadership ownership level that you would say?
Probably one of the biggest ones is when people show you who they are, believe it, because that's usually who they are. So that was one of the big ones. But another one was be courageous enough to make those hard decisions. You can't let them fester, because the longer they fester and the longer they go, the worse they get, and they're the harder to solve.
It's got to be more too in there.
Yeah.
Dude, you unwound a $25 million business.
Um,
What else?
well,
Because these are really important for people.
yeah,
You're going to save somebody's business or relationship
sure.
based on your experience.
Well, again, one of the biggest keys always is honesty, right? Just being honest. And again, I wasn't
Yeah,
honest.
but how do you do that? Okay, tell me how you became honest with yourself, because
Well,
we haven't talked about the rebuild and all that stuff.
yeah,
So like, how have you become honest with yourself and through this process?
I wasn't able to figure that out until after the rebuild. Like I couldn't figure that out then.
Yeah. But let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about what was it that made you realize, and what did you do about it so that maybe people who don't have to rebuild to figure it out?
One of the things that we are so blessed to be able to have is, our mentor group, right?
Yeah, our mastermind group,
Our mastermind group.
the honey badgers.
Yeah, the honey badgers. You and I created it back in 2009, and we brought some guys in, and we thought that this was going to be a great idea to be able to build this, and it turned out to be like truly a life-changing thing, certainly for me. And one of those times was, and it was 2 years ago, and one of the biggest distinctions I had was 2 years ago when we went to Morocco. For everybody, part of one thing that we do is we take a trip one time a year someplace in the world, and we all lock ourselves in a house or someplace, and we work on ourselves, we work on our business, we work on relationship. That's part of who we do and what we have, which is priceless. And so we're on our trip, and I'm in a completely horrible, devastated place. I have, you know, tried to figure it out. I've been closing everything down. I've been selling all of our stuff. We were down to no money. We had nothing. And as a matter of fact, on that trip, if you remember, I said I couldn't go. And I was like, we can't, I was like, guys, I can't afford to go on this trip. And you all turned around and you all had a little side meeting and said, no man left behind. And we said, we'll cover your expense. And that was probably right at the lowest point, right? At that point, things had gotten so bad, it was no money. Every morning I'd get up and I'd have to look at the bank account, the credit cards, and go, okay, oh, I got $30 today. That's all I got left. That's we got to figure it out.
Yeah, you told me we did share this story.
Yeah.
You told me that you would look at your bank accounts and you would turn to your wife
Yeah.
and say, you have $30 that you can spend today.
And that's where we got to. I mean, we got to the point from being on the top and not having a care in the world and spending money on anything and everything we wanted to do, into every morning I would get up and I would look at the apps and go, this is how much money we got today. And she would say, do I put it on the blue card or do I put on the black card? Because I was robbing from Peter to pay Paul, everything I could do. And we was selling everything I could sell on my personal stuff, like everything I could do. And there was two things that happened. I got to that point in the bottom when it was so bad. When, I mean, I had those thoughts of, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to punch out. I had a $2 million life insurance policy. You can take my policy and I'll just be gone. And of course, I knew that wasn't the answer. One day I was on social media somewhere, and I saw a video. And there was this video of this guy, and he was telling a story. and it was called Checkmate.
Check me?
Checkmate.
Oh, checkmate.
And it was one of the most powerful videos I ever had in my entire life. I'll just give you the brief highlights. And he goes through and tells a story. And there's a guy there in a museum, and he's looking at a picture on the wall, and he's looking at the picture, and he's looking at it, and it's the devil, and he's playing chess with a guy, and the guy's just sitting there, and he's distraught, and he's done, and the caption's checkmate. And the guy that's looking at it was the professional, chess player champion in the world. And they come back and they ask him, what are you looking at? And they go, well, they're going to have to change this story, or they're going to have to change this picture. And he said, why? And he says, well, I'm a professional chess player. And he yells out,
That's okay, man.
The king still has one more move. And I heard that and I went, I'm not done. I still got one more move. I don't have to be done. I watched that a dozen times. And I went in and I got a big sticker and I put it right in the middle of my mirror. And I got up every morning and I went, the king has one more move. Because I didn't want to be here any longer. And every day I fought for what the next thing I had to do. And what was the next step that I needed to take to try to create the plan, right, of how to get out of my mess. And the second part of that was Morocco. And we all went to Morocco.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for that conversation. The follow-up will happen next week. We appreciate you guys listening. I hope that it's, my hope that we bring a perspective and shared story that helps you grow and build awareness to the areas of life that you want to improve. That's the mission. And, progress is where we meet happiness. And so keep growing, keep living, keep dreaming. Appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being with us. If you found value in the show and know a friend or a coworker who could benefit from the conversation, please share the link via text or on social media. Remember, each share creates a ripple effect of knowledge and inspiration. We'll see you next week.
The views, information, or opinions expressed by guests during the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Dwayne Kerrigan and his affiliates. Dwayne Kerrigan or the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast is not responsible for and does not verify the accuracy of any of the information contained in the podcast series. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. Listeners are advised to consult with a qualified professional or specialist before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast.